What's up YouTube? Welcome back to Track Talk. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at NF's EP, Fear. Fear is NF's second EP, released in 2025, and it's 6 songs in length. Before we jump in and break down this EP, just some general thoughts about the EP before we even look at the first song. The hype and build-up for this EP was unmatched. It had been nearly 3 years since Nate had dropped anything, and so all the fans leading up to this were constantly waiting. There were so many rumors, so many theories, so many people on Twitter just constantly looking at these mythic tweets that he had put out and deleted, hinting at this EP and when it was going to be released, and certain song snippets were leaked obviously ahead of time. And so I think just going into this, there was already such a high expectation and anticipation, more or less, for this EP. So I think just before we even go in, I think just right off the top, that was something that was really cool, is just the absolute anticipation, because like I said, it had almost been 3 years since Nate released his previous project, Hope, so there was just so much build up in time that people were wondering if we were ever going to hear anything from Nate again. Now jumping into the first song on this EP is the title song of the EP, Fear. Fear is just this song where Nate is just talking about this fear that he has let back into his life, and how he's tried so many different things in so many different ways to prevent fear from coming back into his life, but now it's at the point where this fear is taking over his life and is controlling him and his actions day to day, and he really truly has lost control of himself. I know we can't necessarily base a song off the music video, but the music video for both songs that have music videos on this EP are absolutely amazing, and they do a very good job of kind of conveying the image of what we're hearing in the lyrics and song. And you can literally see the fear entering the mansion, being at Nate's mind and head, and it's a beautiful short film of how this fear is taking over NF's life, and he can't even control himself, and he has these doubts and things that he really can't make his own decisions with his own mind. And I think that just really encapsulates a lot of what NF's work is this mental battle with this fear. Obviously his previous work being Hope is kind of this back and forth of does he have hope, does he not have hope? And obviously that's something that Nate conveys very well in his music. Next song on the EP is the song Home. This song is where Nate is talking about his grandmother who had recently passed away, and all these memories that he had with her, and how there's days where he has these flashbacks and these memories that make it hard for him to move on and to realize that she's no longer here with us. But then he also has these moments of realization that she's found a better place to call home, being in heaven, and that he kind of has that reassurance that she's happy where she is now, and that he can kind of let go and still have these positive and memories that he can reflect on and reminisce on, but that he doesn't have to worry about constantly having this burden of wondering where she is, or that she's not going to be with him anymore here, but that she's in a better place now. And then we have the song Who I Was with MGK, which going into this, before my first ever listen, which is when the EP first came out, I was very intrigued to see how these two would collaborate together, because I feel like MGK obviously has had a whole story on his own with his career, with how he's changed genres, how he's kind of had this rebirth, if you will, after the Eminem beef. But I think it was very intriguing to see these two on the same song, and I think I liked MGK's part. I think there were some really deep things and topics that he talked about in his verse, things such as his relationship with God and how he had lost a best friend recently, which are obviously very, very heavy-hitting things. And I think MGK does a good job of that with all of his music, so I think that wasn't super surprising to see some of those conversations and those topics brought up in his song. I wasn't the biggest fan of Nate's part on the song. I didn't mind, though, I guess it was kind of a bridge in between MGK's part and then the ending, which I guess was NF's verse. I just think Nate's verse was a little bit off vibe for me, or off vibe for NF. The whole screaming kind of thing was, I get what he was maybe going for, where he's kind of lost his mental headspace to be able to convey his thoughts, but I think the screaming was kind of just a little bit off-putting for me. It was kind of hard to listen to after the first time, because it's kind of oh, and now here comes this part again. And something else I thought was very interesting was that in between that, sort of the screaming and then the closing part, which I actually didn't mind from NF, was he had that, when he was recording, he obviously had said that, I know I had messed up. And I thought that was interesting that he openly says he had messed up, but then still included that take into the song, which that always kind of bothered me or bugged me a little bit, because you would expect them to, retake it to get the best take. But maybe that's NF's way of saying that not everything has to be perfect, kind of as a metaphor in the life, that not everything's going to be perfect, not everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows. And then smack dab in the middle of this emotional roller coaster of songs, we have the song Give Me a Reason, which I guess this is what makes an EP great, is that you can have, there's 6 songs, 5 of these songs I would categorize as, more of a sadder tone. And then Give Me a Reason is an absolutely just banger, gym workout, motivational song. where Nate is just talking about this, that he needs that motivation again. He needs the doubters. He needs the haters. He needs the people that when he was coming up from nothing that were telling him that he was nothing, and that now look where he is now. And he's talking about how he wants that back into his life to motivate him to continue making music. I really like this song as well because it had that The Search kind of production and vibe, which for me is one of my favorite albums of all time, and certainly my favorite NF album. So I think kind of getting more reminiscent to that was also really cool. But just as a whole, the rapping was really good. The hook is absolutely so catchy, and for me, once again, as I mentioned in previous videos, that's a big thing I like in music, and Nate does a very good job of that in this song. Up next is the song Sorry. In this song, Nate is talking about how he just wants to be able to say sorry, presumptuously to a former or previous lover in his life. And he just, more or less, the way I interpret it is that he just wants to be able to get that closure and to kind of end things on better terms, and maybe things had been left. I really like the chorus of the song. It definitely felt like one of those kind of radio hits that NF has had in the past. The biggest comparison I had to this song in terms of a vibe was the song Happy from his previous album, Hope. I think they both, like I said, very just catchy, very like sort of radio track hit-esque, which I think Nate does a very good job of in a lot of his albums, and sprinkling in some songs that are more pop, relatively compared to rap. Also a connection I saw between this song and actually the song Happy from Hope, where Nate is talking about fixing this bridge that's been burned, and he actually references that in the song Happy. And so I think that's kind of like a connection of assumptuously talking about the same person having that bridge that's been burned. So he's kind of just reiterating that he's had this previous relationship, the bridge has been burned, but he wants to try and be able to get some closure and to kind of fix things to the best he can where he is right now. And James Arthur's part in that song wasn't necessarily my favorite feature ever, but wasn't necessarily I didn't like it. Probably more or less just due to the fact that I'm not the biggest James Arthur listener or fan, so kind of indifferent there. But it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but I definitely liked NF's part a lot more. And then last but certainly not least, we have the song Washed Up, where Nate is just continuing. It's kind of a movie, and I definitely think it was intentional that the lead song and the last song of this EP had music videos, and they are intentionally tied together to kind of wrap this story, to kind of give you the introduction, talking about the story, and then how it closes it out. And Nate's just wondering if he's actually washed up, hence the title of the song. But I think he's just losing this hope. He's losing this hope that he's gained, and he's starting to once again wonder if there's anything left for him to accomplish. And going back to the music video, the last 15 seconds or so is just a cinematic shot of the mansion burning, and I think that's just such a cinematic shot, and it's this like sort of cliffhanger, like, is this it for NF, or what is he going to do? Because obviously the mansion is represented in NF's mind. Like, what's going on in Nate's head right now that this mansion is just burning to the ground? Like, does this mean he's going to have like a revival? And so obviously people are obviously wondering like where Nate goes from here. Hopefully somewhere at all. People also obviously have wondered if this is it for him or if he will come out with someone else. Obviously we're hoping he does. My overall thoughts on this EP, I gave this EP an 8 out of 10. I don't think there were any songs that were considered like 10s for me, or like songs that were absolutely like perfect. Definitely a couple songs that I would say were very good, being Fear and Washed Up. Everything else was kind of just like, I think I could say it was a good song, but I wouldn't necessarily say it was like a great song. Like, I didn't love it, but definitely nothing that was like, I can't listen to this ever again. My least favorite part of the EP was, like I mentioned, was Nate's part in Who I Was. Just wasn't the biggest fan of. So that song did receive the lowest score. There was a lot of things I did like about this album as a whole. Something I really like that Nate does in a lot of his albums and work is he makes these connections back to his previous music and previous albums and previous songs. So some examples of that was that there was the Map to Hope that was obviously seen in Hope, but it was also seen in this EP, where Nate is finding this map to hope, and then it's blank, and it's just this like, was there ever any hope? And it's just, obviously there's so many connections back to that album, being that it was his most recent work. There's also the mansion, like I've obviously talked about, being Nate's mind. Obvious reference back to the album Mansion. The keys that Fear has, he's walking the door, certainly could be a connection to the keys in Perception, where Nate is trapped in this cell, and he's holding the keys, and so Fear has grabbed these keys and is kind of controlling Nate's mind. And then lastly, just Nate being in all black versus all white, which once again was mentioned in Hope, but it was also in Washed Up's music video, where Nate is wearing this all black attire versus this all white where there's hope and then there's no hope, and it's just kind of this like, where is Nate's mind at right now with this? So I think that was also really cool. I hope y'all enjoyed watching. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. What do y'all rate this EP out of 10? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you think NF will drop something else here? If so, when will he? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you're new, leave a like if you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace out.